It always takes a minute for the live stream to come on, but it looks like it's coming. So
Yeah, I think we're
yeah,
here.
I think we're there. Yeah. So it'll actually come up any second. So how you
Good
doing this morning?
morning.
You all right?
All right, Grand Rising. It's Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
Good
yeah, yeah.
morning, everyone.
Friday the 13th, the dreaded Friday the
I
13th.
know.
Yeah.
What a crazy movie. Um, Hope
Well, not only
everyone's
that,
doing
that
great.
comes from a long time ago.
Long
Yeah.
time ago. So
Yeah.
this is a little different for us, a Friday Live. We used to do them every weekday. Then we moved over to Mondays and Thursdays. And yesterday's was so short, we wanted to do a Friday Live today to connect with everyone again. So here we are. Thanks, Jeff, for doing this.
Yeah.
You feeling good today?
Well, as long as I got coffee, I'm alive.
Oh, I
Yes.
know. Well, that's a given.
Yeah,
That's a given.
exactly.
So, what's going on with the energy this morning?
Oh, this morning is actually kind of good. You got the sun trining the moon. That happens twice every month, where the moon is 120 degrees. And it's a powerful moon. We're heading into a full moon. The full moon, I believe, will be on the 17th. Yeah, that is right. And of course, that's an eclipse coming right up. And eclipses are always something that people are very concerned about. This is actually what we call an annular eclipse. It's not a total eclipse, it's a partial eclipse. And it won't be visible anywhere in the United States. If you're in South America, you might see it a little bit. So it's kind of mostly out in the ocean. But, today is good. After about 10 a.m. This morning, Pacific time, to be specific, it looks like it's right around 10:01 a.m. We're going to have the moon trine sun separate. And then we head to a sextile to Neptune and also a trine to Uranus. Actually, the Uranus trine is first. So what's interesting is I'm hearing on the news all kinds of stuff here. Elon Musk had actually made a statement that I think is pretty doggone accurate, which is, the country is bankrupt. We're paying $1 trillion in interest per year. We're approaching 35 trillion in debt, and it's really dire times right now. And again, I am going to be surprised if something doesn't break out in a much wider spread war. I mean, we're seeing literally the push in Russia. They're actually now sending missiles and drones into Russia itself. So this is really pushing the envelope. And again, we're right around the corner from seeing something in the Middle East, line up. So again, the owners are pushing the envelope with, if you follow the money, you can see exactly why things go where they go. So let's hope nothing happens. Let's hope all this can just settle down and peaceably, but we'll see. With Uranus
Well,
going backwards over that fixed star, I'm going to be really surprised.
yeah. Well, let's hope. I was thinking last night about how accurate the astrology is when it comes to my own personal chart and personal transits and progressions. And then I was thinking about the astrology for the world right now. And so I know I am truly anticipating something insane going on because the astrology's been spot on, and I mean spot on in my chart. So why wouldn't it be for the world?
Well, let's hope it's not. You
Oh,
know,
I hope
I
it's
mean,
not, but
there is free will, and some of these leaders, if they abstain from retaliating or somehow somebody can negotiate a peace deal, that would be really nice,
well,
because
this is where prayer comes in, right? Which is what we
yeah,
were touching on yesterday, prayer and angels and spirit. That's where it comes in,
and
the
common
power of
sense.
prayer. Well,
And
common
common
sense,
sense
yeah.
too, because no one can win an all-out real war. So I mean, the weaponry we have today, it would kill potentially billions. And it's not like, 84, 85 years ago, we were dealing with much more conventional weapons. And now we're not. We have a host of things that are very, very lethal and very dangerous. And let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Well, spirit keeps us going. The angels hold it together. You always talk about this.
Oh yeah, I think the whole thing is absolutely bolted together by spiritual forces we call angels, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. It's interesting. You know, we were talking yesterday about angelic forces, and there literally is what we call an archangel, an angel, a spirit, and an intelligence in each of the planets. And of course, those are subservient to much of the upper divinity angels. But what's interesting, and this doesn't get a lot of press, all the planets also have demonic forces in them too. They have archdemons, they have sub-spirits and intelligences in that as well. So again, I always say this is a matrix of experience here on this planet. And one of the most telling documents, there was a book printed in the 14th century. It was called The Three Books of Occult Philosophy. It's pretty voluminous too. Here, I'll just show you what it looks like. It's pretty big. And inside of that, there is all kinds of really interesting references to what I'm speaking about. I'll just hold this up here. This is a Sephirotic tree, which is in Aramaic and Hebrew, which shows all the angels and all of the spirits that are in the planets. So, you know, when we say the word angel, we always think about something that's really pleasant and nice, which in Western terminology, that is true. But when you start looking at the hierarchies that were originally in this Egyptian, Chaldean, and Hebraic stuff, pretty interesting stuff, because what you get is a planet can be benefic depending on the sign it's in, and it can also be very malefic, and it can be any point in between. And of course, in astrology, we see that by, you know, aspects. We also see that by dignities and various different placements that the planets can be in. It's exceedingly complex. And there's all these different divisions and hierarchies that planets can go in. And that, now it starts making sense why there's angels and then there's demonic forces and all points in between. So really, really an interesting thing to look at. It's much, much deeper than, you know, just this one area of positivity or negativity. It's all points in between. It's a pretty
Yeah.
cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, Rocky Stucci yesterday, he brought up spirit guides, and that's a whole different type of energy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's what I mean. When you start getting into angelology and demonology, man, it gets deep, and it gets deep really fast. And the religions didn't want to deal with this for the most part. You know, they want to keep people on a moral path, which is actually really good. They want to keep people towards morality and, of course, towards demonic behavior. But it's interesting how when you start studying various different conditions. Like, for instance, I have a lot of clients who are psychiatrists and psychologists who have to be in the trenches in prisons or in various different places. And there's no question that there's possession on a lot of these people. And now, when you talk about spirit guides, this gets into the law of attraction and, of course, you know, thinking and free will. We tend to attract what we resonate with. And this gets into the soul roots, which is very, very deep stuff. And now we start talking about incarnations and birth charts and all these angel juxtapositions that are within the birth chart, which is really complex stuff. And it's almost beyond analysis. And, you know, Carl Jung, who I really appreciate, he was the psychiatrist who wrote the book called Synchronicity. And this gets into that. And of course, the Police wrote a song. They had an album called Synchronicity, which I thought was pretty cool. But what you find when you start studying either this from a logical psychiatric perspective or scientific perspective, if you will, and that's what Jung, I think, was so unusual about. This man really had an ability to take science and analytical techniques in psychiatry and also look at all this causal effect that's happening in the universe that's inexplainable by science. Well, he got attracted to astrology. Isn't that interesting? And of course, that's what made, I think, to a large degree, he and Freud kind of separate. And if anybody who doesn't know who Carl Jung is, he was a Swiss psychiatrist who was also kind of the protege of Freud. And of course, these are two of your more famous kind of founding psychiatrists. And what was really interesting about Jung's work is how much he became attracted to astrology and said that this synchronicity that happens in the universe seems to be something related into the soul. Now, he doesn't get too deep into certain areas of that. It's a complex book when you read it, but really intelligent for a psychiatrist to jump over into the esoteric world of occult and astrology. And really interesting because that fits into angels and archdemons and archangels and all this stuff. So what we've got here, I believe, is I always say the earth is a soul cauldron. It's stuck on spin cycle. We're all here spinning, right? It's like a wash machine. And we all pop out when the soul appears to be done with its experiences. And the mysteries of the souls, I think, are beyond, again, analysis, where there is such a diversity in birth charts. You can never get the same one twice, especially when you look at precession around the central sun and all of the fixed stars that'll never be in the same place twice. You see, not with all the planets where they are. I mean, you're talking about something that's infinitely complex. It is a matrix here for the soul. And these souls are forced to come here, or many want to come here, it's said. And when we draw first breath, that's the synchronization of time and karma. Well, all these angelic forces and archdemon forces and guides, spirit guides, and all this seem to be amalgamated at that first breath and is with us through this whole experience we call life until we exit the body known as death. And the mysteries are what happens after death. Well, it sure seems the psyche keeps intact. And that's proven again by many psychiatrists and psychologists. I always mention Dr. Carl Wicklund, which I love his work, where he would get into dialogue with people on the other side. We call them ghosts, but they were disincarnate souls. And once he got them to consciously realize by speaking through his wife as a medium, they would all wake up and move on. So again, when you kind of summarize all this stuff, we are in a matrix of angelic forces. The Magus of Strovolos brought up a really good topic about that. He said he would go into the astral planes. And of course, people refer to that as OBE, out of body experiences, but this is actually intended astral travel. And he would go into these various dimensions that are in the astral planes, and there's a whole bunch of them. Again, it's believed to be 49 dimensions, 49 subdimensions, which is that alone is unfathomable. And what's interesting is he would approach these disincarnates, meaning people on the other side who are now deceased, as we would call it, and they're living in the astral planes, and they've created these psychonoetic environments which were very parallel to their lives. And he would point out, he'd say, you're not alive anymore. You've created all this reality around you. And some of them didn't care. They were so immersed into the physical world, because you got to admit, Earth is an interesting place. You can buy all kinds of fancy stuff. There's a lot of material and physical pleasures on the Earth. There's also a lot of pains too. And depending on who you are and what you experienced, this seems to be something that goes on. And I think it has a lot to do with attracting reincarnation. And now you get into the law of attraction, you get into free will, and you get into there appears to be a divine right of, free will. And what we have in our minds is the law of attraction. It's who we are. And you talk to so many people, and you can see their reality structures are their world, and everyone's is different. One person's goal is to make $1 trillion or $1 billion if they can, and the other one's goal is just to be happy, or to be healthy, or to be free of some emotional bondage or some relationship issue. So again, I'm always blown away doing readings that nobody, and I mean nobody, is the same. And speaking of, Dr. Jung's analysis of synchronicity, I think many of us can say, some days we see certain numbers on a clock repeatedly, right? Like 1111, I hear a lot. Or I'll notice in readings, I'll have someone in the morning who is got a certain condition, And I'll find very similar conditions in the next reading. Not exactly the same, because no one's the same, but I'll find commonalities. And these are called synchronicities. And these are waves of patterns that seem to be going through the universe, and especially this planet. It's very interesting stuff. And we are clearly in a spiritual matrix in the physical world. The earth is a place where spirit gets concretized into matter, which is stunning when you really think about it. It's absolutely divine. There's no question about it.
Absolutely divine and absolutely stunning is the right word. Stunning. Don't Care Bear is asking, how can we figure out how many spirit guides we have? Now, I told you a long time ago, Jeff, I went to see an acupuncturist who is also a medium. And when I walked in the door, she said to me, "Oh, wow, your spirit guide just came in right with you." And she
I think they're
described,
always with us.
and
I think they're always with us. I really do.
it was wild. And unbeknownst to me, right, I just felt like, okay, I'm just, here walking. And when she said that to me, it hit me. And then I kind of stopped and tried to pick up that energy, and I couldn't, but she could. And she went on to describing the whole relationship that we have and why this spirit guide is in my life. So going back to Don't Care Bear's question, how can we figure out how many spirit guides we have? I don't know if we can or not.
Well, in astrology, I actually do an angel calculation on pendants, and that is a angel that is believed to be one of the spirit guides, one of the main spirit guides. And what you do is you literally project from the ascendant in a counterclockwise ways in the succession of signs, and wherever the inner seven planets lie, that summation is the angel. And I actually have to order those in dignity. And there's numerology that actually, believe it or not, is in the Bible and in the Psalms. And the Old Testament is a codex. If you take the original Aramaic and Hebrew, and you can literally see oftentimes where the karmic lineage is. Like I've done angel pendants for people, and literally, this one was a textile maker. This one was of the tribe of whatever of the 12 tribes of Israel, which I believe we all are. I don't care what race you are. I don't care whatever. We're all descendants of the 12 tribes, which interestingly enough might just equal the 12 signs and constellations. So this is really deep stuff. And I believe the soul roots are far above anything to do with astrology. And astrology is just the matrix at which the soul transmission comes through, which brings you the angels and the guides and all the stuff that are with us on the physical plane. The other one I look at a lot is the Eastern Horizons degree. There's an angel or force that rules on that. I think all of us have myriads of angelic forces, and scientists kind of laugh at that because, a scientist will tell you, or a doctor will tell you, oh, your blood pressure is this, and all your various blood work is at a certain thing, but no one can tell us why a person stays alive. Again, now we get back to the ancient analysis of what the hell is energy. We don't know what energy is. It's not power. It's not watts. It's not heat. It's not cold. It's not light. It's all energy that manifests into these various different physical forms. We don't know what energy is. And this gets into, and I'll put this on the screen if I can find it here. Again, this whole element of what I always talk about, which is if you look at here, I'll put this on the screen. Again, this is one of my favorite diagrams. And if you understand what's happening, can you see this diagram right now?
No, not yet.
No, you can't. Here we go. There we go. Now we've got it. So let me put that back up. There we go. This is one of my favorite diagrams. And the reason why is it's actually quite simplified. And it says that up here. It's a simplified conceptual overview of the four basic worlds of creation, which there's nothing basic about them. And, divinity, God, whatever you want to say, is actually above all creation. And this Ein Sof Or is actually, they say, filters that actually have to dim down the light to even begin to be into a creational way. And all of the souls are believed to be created up here. So this is really divine stuff. There's no astrology up here. There's no planets. There's no signs or anything else. So this is really a very sacred world, and they claim 49 dimensions, 49 subdimensions. And then the world gets more dense down here in Braya, which again is 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions. But the mixture of good and evil starts right here in the Yetziratic worlds. That's what the general belief is. This is where the war in heaven seems to be always happening. And that is the evil spirits. And if you get into many of the ancient texts in different cultures and religions, they all talk about the war in heaven. Now, of course, in the Western world, we have the story of the Garden of Eden, right? And again, very analogous in the Bhagavad Gita, the Puranas, and all this. You get into all the Vedantic texts and even some of the Buddhist texts. It says the exact same thing. Many cultures talk about the same thing, and I could go on and on about that, but those are the main ones. So what appears to have happened is the evil spirits were cast down, and they are then forced to be a part of creation where all this spirit gets transformed and attached into matter. I mean, just stop and think about what goes on in the womb of a woman, whether it's again, an animal or a human. It's stunning when you think about it. You're taking just, the building blocks of life, and you're attaching spirit to it. And then out comes a living, breathing being that genetically follows this path that is super complex that we're just beginning to understand. And then it matures, it atrophies, and it dies. Well, they say that the evil spirits are actually forced to be a part of that creation. That's why they hate creation, because they're actually bondaged to do it. And this is why we see so much dissension in the world, as well as positive things in the world. But divinity always wins. And again, what brought me to this subject is energy. What the heck is energy? We don't know what the hell energy is, and we don't. And I defy any physicist to prove to me, just define energy purely by itself. You cannot. It is a force of life. And many of the Vedantic texts talk about a force called jiva. And isn't this interesting? Because when you look at what the heck is the word, the Sanskrit word, jiva, and you can see here, watch, if I put this up here, Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system, represents jiva. And look at its glyph, the crescent of the moon over the cross. And what does it stand for? The life force energy. And the other interesting thing about that is if you look at, and this is really a cool mystery, if you look at the human aura and the chakras, guess what? That one's not the right one. This is the better one. You can see in a human being, Jupiter represents the pineal point out to the third eye chakra. And it's interesting. I was just talking to a doctor the other day who does really deep analysis on MRIs and various different, photographs of the brain. And she said, we are finding more and more and more people with calcified pineal glands. Well, this is one of the ways the clarity of consciousness gets through the third eye chakra. Now, it's been known throughout eons, everyone's talking about the pineal gland as the gateway to the astral worlds or psychic work or ability to be very clairvoyant, etc. And all this fluoride, all these food preservatives, these chemtrails, all the stuff they're spraying on food is exactly what seems to calcify and block the pineal gland, among other things. So this is really interesting because, again, what we are, and it's interesting, the largest grossing movie ever was Avatar. And I think it struck a chord. I didn't like it that much, but I appreciated it. It was quite a production. Of course, James Cameron is a great director. But isn't that interesting? That was the vicarious lying down and then going into this astral world, taking on another body and having this whole, incredible experience. And of course, that's what an avatar is. We are avatars. And we're so blocked from remembering this. And again, that's that mark we all got right here. We're knocked out and then we're put into the game. But all these spirit guides, angels, and cycles of astrology, which I like to use the analogy. It's the road we're on. It's the path and road we're on and all its events in time that unfold. So pretty wild stuff. It's much more beyond astrology. What's titillating and interesting about astrology is it gives you the marker points in time at which this free will and karma are meeting. You see?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
And this is exactly what Carl Jung was addressing in synchronicity. A really interesting study. And I really commend him. Here's a guy born in the 1800s who was drawing parallels in a scientific world to what the ancients were talking about all the time, which is creation.
Wow, which is creation, which is creation. So we've got a number of questions here.
Which is exceedingly divine. Anyone who's an atheist, I would say that's your free will right to be an atheist. But I'll tell you what, astrology, especially Vedic and Nadi astrology, prove the existence of a divine force bringing all this energy, manifesting in myriads of ways, in human, animal, plant, mineral, as well as just energy phenomena and throughout the universe. And it's inexplicable. And that's why creation will never stop. Destruction happens, rebuilding and creation always continues, always, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Can't destroy creation.
No, you can't. You cannot. Thank God.
Yeah, in this case, literally, thank God.
Literally. Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have a number of questions here, and I want to let everyone know I have to take these in order. I'm so sorry, don't care about magical vibes. How are you today? This is a question I will pose to Jeff. It's because it's an interrogation. So we'll look at it over the weekend and we will address it on Monday. She's just asking, or he, magical vibes, will Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris have a significant influence in the election? So let's look at that interrogation later, Jeff, because
I could respond to that by this. It's interesting. We did a podcast, which was the Lichman prediction. He predicts Harris is going to win. And I told you, I thought Harris was going to come out swinging on this debate because she had Mars in her ascendant, and she did. She really did. A lot of people say she won. But there's also huge backlash right now. In fact, Dr. Phil had these psychologists on, and they were talking about how they were analyzing body language. And clearly, ABC is being cited for being biased against Trump because they fact-checked him 5 times. They fact-checked Harris 0. So, everyone can run around and say she won the debate. I think it was monkey pile. And, again, they can deny it all they want, but that's the way it is. Apparently, Trump has refused a 3rd debate, but that could change. We'll see what happens. But why I brought this up is because, right now, it's the lines are moving back and forth across one way or another. At least that's what they tell us to believe. But if the chart is right, Trump is weak in the public eye versus her in some ways and very strong in others. And the only thing that gives me the reason I think he's going to prevail is because his signifactor beholds Mars in the midheaven in that chart. You can go back and watch that video. Now, we'll see, because we're going to find out in just 50-something days from now. But, again, these elections, they're very manipulated. Again, I don't think we've seen an honest election in a long, long time in this country. And it's pretty evident that there's a lot of manipulation going on. But we'll see. We'll see if the chart is right. I tend to lean Taylor Swift's thing is
it's
not going to move the needle much,
It's a huge endorsement. And the question is, will it have an effect on it? So let's look at that.
It's a huge endorsement if you're really into Taylor Swift.
A lot of people are.
A lot of people are. Not that many.
Let's see. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to look at. So we'll take a look at that. Rocky Stucci Jr. is here with us today. Rocky, I hope you heard that we expounded upon your inquiry yesterday at the beginning of the show. So if you hadn't joined us at that time, please rewind this when you can. But he's asking today, using your natal birth chart, how can you discover your life purpose life career, and what are you meant to do? So
That's a
can we
good
see
one.
that in the
That's
birth
one I
chart?
get all the time in readings. Again, I'm never here to tell anybody what to do because I think that's a big mistake when people tell you you should do this or do that. We all have free will. But what's really great about the astrology is you can see the Lord of your 10th is direction in life. It's not just career, it's also purpose because a lot of people have a purpose in life that they may not recognize. And the astrology can definitely give you a lot of insights into that. And also the Eastern Horizon degree, which is an angel or spirit guide. It's one of them that's very powerful, that is very indicative of your soul's inner drive. And see, this gets back into the law of attraction, positive thinking, goal setting, and all this. We have free will. This is why I think we got the chart we got. And the free will is what attracts all this energy. And when you have enough energy in the soul, that's when incarnation seems to happen. And some of it could be negative. Some people have not real noble goals. I mean, they don't know what they want, or there are some people that have some pretty shallow goals. There are a lot of people that have very noble goals. It depends on who you are. And the astrology can definitely point to that. The Lord of the 10th. And I've noticed people's goals change throughout life. And that's one of the interesting things about progressions and doshas and various different transits is there are certain things that happen in certain people's lives that change the direction of their life completely. I know that happened to me in my 40s. I had the primary directed moon cross the ascendant, huge change in direction of life. And this happens to many souls. Other souls, it won't. And it's all shown in the chart. I always look for these very powerful progressions of the moon and the sun, and also various points to the angles and doshas. Every time you move into a new major dosha, life shifts, and you're either contending with the dissipation of some energy and karma, or you're riding a wave that carries you that you didn't expect. So it's a roller coaster ride. And again, when you look at many people's lives, they shift directions a lot, an awful lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's
Whether
jump.
you like him or hate him, what's interesting about Donald Trump is he was a real estate, mogul for all of his life. Well, what's interesting, what made this guy change to politics? And of course, I think it was Oprah and many others had said to him years earlier, why don't you get into politics? Well, Donald Trump won the 2016 election exactly when the primary directed sun, first time and only time in his life, crossed his ascendant. He changed directions, went into politics. Isn't that interesting? And I see this. I see actors and actresses, or I'll see various different people. They totally change their life in different directions when the chart indicates. And again, free will is at play here. But these are trigger points that are almost like new beginnings. And it's interesting about angels. They actually say these progressions, planets, and doshas are angelic forces that seize and grasp the aura. So it's kind of like musical chairs. And in fact, they actually call planets graha in Sanskrit, which actually means seizers or graspers of the aura. And when you look at angels, spirits, intelligences, demons, archdemons, spirits and intelligence, hierarchies in each one, you've got literally a matrix of infinite possibilities that are combined in a birth chart that all seems to happen based on the laws of attraction or resonance or sympathetic vibration to the soul. So I don't think the astrology is us. We have caused the astrology. And this is where the religions might have been right. And that is the morality, or you could say the innate desires, is what attracts these physical experiences in different forms. And if you put the laws of karma in, that's why it boomerangs back. And also, then you get into shared karmas with soul roots, which is very interesting. So the earth is a very special place in a very divine way. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. Wow. We've got Kazmir here. Hello, Kazmir. He's saying he consulted with a local astrologer and he was told that he has Chandra dosha. I have to do a goddess Bhadra Kali Upasana on every Avanamsi day of the month. Do you have an angel equivalent to the Bhadra Kali in the Western scriptures?
I don't have a snappy answer to that, but yes. See, now that's interesting because we're listening to a gentleman from India. And it's interesting how, if you study the Vedantic stuff, that's all, again, deities and angels, and propitiation and mantras to these is a way to reduce it. Now, isn't that interesting? Even in the West, we have the same thing where people will make prayers to certain saints or angels or so on and so forth to propitiate, or you could say to change. And again, this is where tithing gets into. And I have to compliment the Vedic astrologers because there's a myriad of things: gemstones, mantras, propitiation. Like if you're in a K2 dosha, which can rule violent animals, you're supposed to, like help violent animals in some indirect way or direct way. You got to be careful with that. But it's quite interesting. I've got a lot of those old texts. So no, I don't have an answer to that exact correlation in the West, but I would say I could look it up. I mean, there's a lot of lunar angelic forces and spirits that are in there. And, this gets into the Western text called the Sefer Ratziel, which there's been many, many versions of throughout the eons here. That in the West may be one of the oldest texts we know about in astrology, and no one knows how old it is, but the lore is it was actually given to Adam and Eve when humans first formed in the physical realm by the archangel Ratziel. That's why they call it Sefer, which is book, Ratziel, which is from the archangel Ratziel. And there's been many versions of that. And there's all kinds of, again, prayers and sacrifices and, mantras and things in the Western version like that. So, but that's an interesting point to correlate some of the propitiation mantras and prayers to some of the Western stuff. And there's actually a professor that it was called the Torah and the Gita. They actually compared the Western Old Testament and Psalms to the Bhagavad Gita, and it was eerily close in terms of many of the parallels that they found. So I'm sure there is. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. It's something we can look up, though.
You could. It would take some work to cross correlate, but yeah, you could.
Yeah, it'd be
Absolutely.
interesting. Really interesting to do that.
Yep. I mean, there's so many versions of angels and really, really interesting stuff. The Egyptian, the Chaldean, the Sumerian stuff all got kind of mixed in with some of the Hebraic stuff. And then there's really hardcore rabbinical texts, which I find very fascinating. And some of them are really accurate.
Mm-hmm.
That was one I
Mm-hmm.
was holding up before, was the Aramaic and Hebrew Sephirotic tree of life, which really gets into all these angel spirits, demons, archdemons, and intelligences, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is divinity presides over it all. This whole physical realm, not only this planet, but many other planets and many other dimensions seem to be in some hierarchical order interacting with all these spiritual beings from the best I can glean. And no one
Yeah,
really knows, really deep
yeah,
stuff.
really deep, really deep stuff. Hello, Sky Guy 888. Thank you so much for your kind comment. Sky Guy is also saying, I think technology is going to prove the soul and afterlife. You can already see it with specialized cameras and devices.
Oh, yeah. You bet. Yeah, there's many devices now that are detecting various different waves and electromagnetic fields, temperature changes. Yeah, and a lot of ghost hunters are using that stuff. You could feel it too. You can, if you get in touch, you can really feel it. It's amazing how protected we are in our auric fields. That's why it's really important to keep your health good. I find drugs and alcohol really weaken the aura. And a lot of times dis-ease comes in because the auric field is weakened or has been penetrated. And This is deep stuff. Of course, chemists will look at that and say, well, it's all biological, this and that, and so on and so forth, which they're right. But it's interesting. The forces behind that certainly seem to be spiritual. And it's really good to protect your aura.
Yeah. Well, this next question is very interesting, kind of connected to that. Tucker is asking, when one has Spica on the ascendant near the moon and has lost the ability to hear and see spiritually, how can you restore that gift?
So he probably, it sounds like he's referring to the fixed star Spica. Yeah.
Spica, excuse me. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a powerful fixed star. And, again, there's myriads of fixed stars. Astrologers tend to select the brighter ones and the ones that are more historically identifiable. But I think there's so many stars that we could never. I don't know, because there probably is other factors going on. You'd have to look at he got his major transits going on and progressions, because see, that's the ebbs and flows throughout life. And one of the things that's always struck me is Nadi astrology. When you get in certain configurations of progressions as well as transits, particularly Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu, they can take you right out of this physical world. That's when the termination of karma or the completion of karma is done, which we call death. And very interesting stuff. And I'm always struck with the power that these planets and transits have. And that could be what he's experiencing. So I couldn't answer that without looking at his chart. And again, this stuff takes a lot of analysis.
So Spica just alone on the ascendant near the moon, that energy though, you're saying that energy alone, what can that create?
Well, that's a good energy. I mean, Spica is a very beautiful fixed star. And, I always keep the correspondences next to me, but that would tend to give him great intuition,
Wow.
and connection to the psychic world.
So there's something else going on in the chart which would cause that ability to hear and see
Maybe,
spiritually.
maybe if he had it prior, as it sounds like, and then he's now not having it. Is that what I
I
understand?
don't know,
Yeah.
Tucker. Maybe you can let us know.
Yeah, there's a
Uh,
delay in the feed. But yeah, that's usually the case. I mean, I have found, I'm just stunned at how powerful. I had one individual who was calling me for years and years and years and had so much health issues, and there were really challenging progressions. And as soon as those progressions got done, major improvement, major improvement. And you could say that he was in a karmic slump. And prior to that, he was fine. You see, so I see this a lot where there are really powerful themes that come in at a certain point in your life and then they'll leave. And boy, they can really affect the life for positive or negative, depending on what they are.
oh
And you
yeah,
can really get a good indication from that.
right, right. Well, I'm waiting to hear from Tucker, but let's move on to Goob. Jeff, I keep experiencing orbs, angels, archetypes, synchronicities, visions, and telepathy. I just want to watch TV and enjoy my Krispy Kremes. How do I turn it all off?
Yeah. I've had some people who've been around that stuff. I actually had one remote viewer. He was having really crazy stuff. And again, it usually showed up with progressions or doshas in the chart. If you know when those begin and end, or when they're in influence, you can counteract it by first knowing that it's going to stop here. There's also a lot of really good methods that you can use in spiritual stuff. There's like the Psalms have certain real powers when you understand the codes in them. And there's also techniques where you can banish and protect around you. It's just really powerful stuff using sacred geometry that you project psychically. And this stuff is really effective in clearing and in holding the soul. And I've done a lot of that, and it actually is really powerful. Remember, I was clearing a place once, and you were present, Ella, and you actually saw an entity jump out the window. Remember that?
Oh, you bet I remember it. I've seen a couple of entities. I mean, I saw that one run out the window. I saw the one leave the chair that you cleared, and I
Yeah, yeah.
felt the whole struggle of that entity not wanting to detach itself from that chair.
Yeah.
Really, really bizarre. Really.
See, now this is
bizarre.
interesting because when you get certain souls who were rooted in the physical plane in some deep, deep psychic rooted, intention, whatever it might be. And I mean, you look around this world, there's some people that you really raise an eyebrow when you look at what they do. And there's some people who do very noble things as well. And again, this is the ultimate playground here for the soul. And some of these get really locked into some very dark stuff. And I notice alcohol, drugs, anger, and violence all seem to have a lot of connection to this. And they can get locked in even when they're disincarnate and attached to material things that they were attached to in the physical world. I run into this a lot clearing homes where the previous owner who had died doesn't know that they're dead. They're still dwelling in that same physical place, but on the next astral plane. And of course, you hear the owner say, well, there's something about this house I don't like. It feels haunted, or this or that, or I'm always angry. So this thing goes on all the time in dwellings, because how many people have lived and pass on? And some of the less conscious souls tend to stay there, and they're very rooted in this lower vibration of the conscious mind. See, again, the lower conscious mind is referred to as the nefesh. Again, I can put that on the screen, and I've got to go after this because I'm kind of running out of time here. But this diagram, again, is it's kind of a parallel out of the Sharia Gilgam. And it's a way, it's not the only way, but it's a great way to talk about the conscious mind. See, this big thick dashed line here is the demarcation or division, if you will, between the so-called conscious mind down here and the subconscious mind up here. So in the Sharia Gilgam, they refer to the conscious mind as the nefesh. And this is why AI will never be the same as us. Why? Because we use logic and deductive reasoning, and we emotionalize it. No matter how rational any human being is, they all have some emotional attachment to their thoughts. Computers don't. They can be programmed to act that way. AI can act like it does, but it doesn't, you see. And this is what's unusual about a human being, is that we emotionalize things. And of course, that's what forms the present personality. But the interesting thing is it's not us. It is the keyboard, the mouse, and the screen, or the steering wheel, the gas pedal, and the brakes that connect us to this physical world. And if that's all we know, that's where we're going to stay until we realize. So that's why psychic phenomena is actually good, because the spirit, also known as the Rosh, bleeds down into this. And most importantly, the karmic gateway, which is also known as the neshama, which seems to be the interconnected transmission lines to the soul and interconnected soul roots, that's raining down on us, and why many of us are experiencing events that we can't explain. Why we ended up with the parents we did, why we had the childhoods we did. Some were great, some were horrible, some were abandoned, some were brutal, and some were divine. So all this stuff is forces that we don't have any direct control of, but we're at the effect of our environments, especially when we're young. And then you've got the human spirit and the upper divinity of the soul. And this is complex stuff, and this diagram doesn't even begin to crack open the complexities that are connected to this. But it's really interesting because, if we stay down in the lower awareness of the conscious mind, we're likely to kind of stay there when we exit the body. And that's what I think the processes of reincarnation might be partially caused by, is that we need to keep coming until all this washes off us. That's why I call the earth the soul cauldron. It is a wash machine stuck on spin cycle. And with that one, right. I gotta go.
Well, let me just jump in with one last thing. Tucker did just connect again. So let me just toss this one out. Speaker intuition was very active at birth as a teenager, saw things, had many visitations, was bullied spiritually, and dreams felt like old memories, stress of life. Speaker no longer active. So I just wanted to put that out there since we did address his.
Well, what happens is that the moment of birth, the birth chart actually progresses in what we call primary directions 1 degree per year. So that's why no one's life will ever stay exactly the same, even though some people seem like they do. They don't. There's all kinds of progressions that are constantly happening, and you have secondary progressions. What's really wild about a secondary progression is whatever age you are, that is exactly where the planets will be that many days after you were born. Like, say you're 40 years old, or you're 30, or you're 20, or whatever age you end up being. Secondary progressions actually identify the chart precisely that amount of days as years you are old. You know, you'd have to see it on a chart to see, but it's so accurate, it's creepy. So accurate, it's creepy. And you can see background things. So the Earth is a time machine. It's where time and karma synchronize. There is no time. Well, there might be universal times, but in terms of angels and all that, they say they're much different than Earth. Our Earth is based on the rotation. And even if you're a flat earther, it's still the cycles around it, and the cycle around the sun, which is our year and our seasons, and the lunations, which is the moon around us every month. And what's interesting is if you took us out of that realm and you put us on a different planet with a different synodic, astronomical conditions, you're going to have a different time reference. There is no time. And it's interesting because many of the really good researchers in this area have found that many disincarnates say that the moon is opposite. When it's full here, it's new on the astral planes. So, and the cycles are kind of inverted. So it's again, there's no reality, there's only perception, even though there is a common universal reality in the souls, but it's deep, really deep stuff. And our conscious minds are very rooted in a three-dimensional 5 sense reference point. And our disorientation comes when we start getting out of that. That's why astral travel is very dangerous to someone who's not very careful with it. And this is talked about in many of the texts, Zohar and many others, about astral travel. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting stuff. Read The
Very, very
Magus of Strobel. It's a really good book. Really good book.
excellent. Excellent, excellent. Achilles is saying hello, sending his love. I sent him a bunch of hearts.
All right.
Yeah.
We like Achilles. Yeah.
And I want to pass on, I know you have to go just after this, I'll pass on something Cosmere is saying here about what was recommended to him. So, because I know you'll find it very interesting. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for this. We'll see everyone on Monday. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for your questions, your comments, for joining us. We really appreciate you, and we enjoy this so much, sharing this with you all. So